Sonar is working, Captain. The Russian disappeared. 1 minute he was steady, 4,000 yards off the bow, and then he was gone. And for a second, I thought I heard...
Heard what?
I thought I heard singing, sir.
Singing?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Adrenalheads, I'm Mark.
And I'm Greg.
And this week we're covering The Hunt for Red October from 1990. And this was Greg's pick, and Greg has a personal attachment to this movie because of what he does, or what he has been doing for years. So, Greg, you want to fill us in?
Sure, yeah. I've been in the United States Navy for 23 years, and I've spent about 12 of them attached to submarines, specifically nuclear submarines. So this is one of the popular movies to watch on the boat. I would say this, Das Boot, and Down Periscope are probably the three more popular. Never Crimson Tide, because that's just a bunch of bullshit. But,
Not Running Silent, Not Running Deep?
Run Silent, Run Deep is one I've never actually seen, but it's another one that's been popular on board.
Oh, cool.
Like on Sunday night or Sunday afternoons, we would have on my first boat we would have sub movies, and there are actually plenty of them out there.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, Operation Petticoat is another one.
Yep. Yeah, that one U571.
Yep.
I was a little bit more into the more modern because that was in like the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. So the ones that had been in the previous 10, 15 years.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool because you're literally living on that sub or that boat, as it were, all that time.
The tense ones are not the ones that you want your spouses to watch.
Yeah, exactly. You want them to watch the more comedic ones.
Yeah.
and say, hey, that doesn't really happen on the boat
no,
itself.
That doesn't actually happen. We don't actually do dangerous things.
Or we don't have that many women on the boat. All right. Well, with that, do you want us to run us through the actual synopsis of the movie itself?
Sure, absolutely. Based on the popular Tom Clancy novel, this suspenseful movie tracks Soviet submarine captain Marco Ramius, Sean Connery, as he abandons his orders and heads for the east coast of the United States. Equipped with innovative stealth technology, Ramius' submarine, Red October, is virtually invisible. However, when an American sub briefly detects the Russians' presence, CIA agent Jack Ryan, played by Alec Baldwin, sets out to determine Ramius' motives, fearing he may launch an attack on the U.S.
Yeah. Pretty much a brief synopsis of what's going on, but doesn't really give too much, unless you are Tom Clancy.
I would say that would be that was a good trailer, right?
Yeah. Literally. With the typical heavy voice that you have. All right. So within that, we move on to people we may know within the film that we've probably seen before, but we've already talked about a lot within this particular podcast because between the amount of movies that I've done with other people, we've seen them before. But I'll start off, and the first one is Sean Connery. So we all know who Sean Connery is. So we've talked about him before on this podcast, but to name a few, James Bond from 1962 to 1967. So he's the first James Bond that we all know, that I know, and that I had to grow up on because my father was a big James Bond fan and loved Connery. He was also in The Untouchables in 1987, and to add another one, Entrapment in 1999.
And then the one that you covered with Ben, right? The Rock?
Yes.
That was awesome.
Hence why I didn't really send that one out. I was trying to change it up a little bit.
I gotcha, but man, that's I love that movie, and listening to you guys talk about it was awesome.
The Rock.
Then we have a young and comparatively Alec Baldwin, Also from Beetlejuice, Great Balls of Fire, The Juror, and many, many more. Most recently, maybe not most recently, but he was in 30 Rock for a long time.
Yes.
And then you see a very entertaining puppet of him in Team America.
And a funny version of him on SNL as Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Well, next up after that would be Scott Glenn. And you may remember him from Urban Cowboy in 1980. The Right Stuff, which I'm a big fan of, in 1983. That was a huge cast, if you don't remember. Ed Harris is part of that movie, too. And many a young actor at that time that have moved on and became very famous. Silverado in 1985. Backdraft in 1991. And plus a huge catalog of films.
Sam Neill in Possession in 1981. Dead Calm in 1989. The amazing Jurassic Park in 1993.
Yep.
Bicentennial Man 1999, and so much more.
Yes. And of course, James Earl Jones, who we all know. And we know him from Conan the Barbarian for 1982. Soul Man for 1986. Coming to America in 1988. And of course, being the voice of Darth Vader.
And then the one that I always remember is Field of Dreams. And then obviously Mustafa.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Tim Curry. It says mostly, but mostly known as Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show in 1975, and Annie in 1982, Clue as the butler in 1985, and then one of my favorite roles is him as Pennywise in It, in I think 1992, 93. Yeah,
very true.
He was terrifying.
Oh, he was. He did terrify a lot of people. So that's why I always give a little bit, hey, say what you want. Because I'm probably going to not put in too much,
absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely, sure.
Next up would be Richard Jordan, and you could see him in Logan's Run from 1976, which Jerry and I will be covering soon. Dune in 1984, and Gettysburg in 1993.
I don't even really necessarily know who that was. What character do you play?
I'm forgetting the name, but if you saw his face, you would definitely remember.
I'm sure
He's
that I would.
one of the Russian operatives.
Gotcha. Okay. Stellan Skarsgård in Good Will Hunting, 1997. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, 2001. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, 2007. And Dr. Eric Selvig in the Thor movies and in the MCU. And then in Deep Blue Sea as A Wonderful Death.
Yes, A Wonderful Death on a gurney.
Yeah.
All right. So that's just to name a few. If we went through the whole cast, forget it. We'll be here for days. It would take
forever, yeah.
I just wanted to throw the highlights and spotlights of people that were in the film that I thought of. So next up would be general thoughts of the movie. So, Greg, what are your general thoughts of this particular movie since you picked it out?
This is one of those movies that I have always it's always just kind of in the back of my head. It's not necessarily like one of my favorites or anything like that, but it's definitely dramatic. I personally think that you kind of get into, like, you start to empathize and like, I think the character development's pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then I think that Connery as Ramius, you really just feel for him, even though he's kind of a douchebag, at least.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you've never seen the movie before, he starts off as kind of like a douchebag, and then he like kills a guy in his first scene, and you're like, who the fuck is this guy?
And he blames it on the tea and falling off, hitting his head.
Oh, he slipped on his tea. Yeah, I mean, like, so you're kind of like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? So you would think, that, oh shit, maybe he's actually like gone rogue, and he's actually potentially going to do something really dangerous. Mm. Now, after having seen this movie, you know he's a good guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, a quote unquote good guy. But I have forgotten how you feel when you don't know what the ending is, and you don't know
the outcome.
The outcome, right? Yeah. And I was just like, oh man, this is actually super tense, because, you know, if you're going in, because I remembered he was good, but I kind of, this watch, I thought of it from I've never seen this, I don't know anything about it type of movie, and I was like, holy shit, yeah, this is actually pretty tense. Yeah,
for me, I had to look through it through fresh eyes again, because it's been a while since I saw it. It's something that my father always loved. And it was something that my father always loved: war movies, anything that had to deal with battle, including with subships. So he and I used to bond over that stuff. I was, as a kid, a little kid, I never really got into it. I hated the idea of watching spaghetti westerns or these army movies. But as I've gotten older, I adapted and was able to appreciate some of these films. And this was one of them because it came out in 90. So I was out of high school. So I think I may have watched it maybe about 3 times over the course of the years before, my father had passed, and I maybe seen it a couple of times afterwards. And I, obviously before the podcast, I started watching it a couple of times. But I thought this, with fresh new eyes after having watched it in quite some time again, I started realizing, wow, this is really much an intense, thrilling combat and defection kind of movie. And I thought it was very well written and played out within the movie itself. Very effective with its portrayal of the characters within its time. It was definitely a thrilling experience now because I've forgotten so much. So it's as if I'm watching a movie again for the first time because I can't remember half of what had happened. I know certain key spots that I liked and amused me, but when I had to watch this again for the podcast, I was like, wow, this is actually intense, and it's not as bad as people made it seem during the the promotions for the movie when it first came out.
I mean, I was 11 when it came out, so
yeah.
I didn't probably watch this until I was probably 15, 16 in the mid 90s. I remember watching it at home because I was a bit of a cinephile when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And, I remember going to Blockbuster and renting this. And I watched it once or twice when I was a kid. And then, I don't know, probably a half dozen times, in the past 20 years or so. But always in passing, never sitting down and thinking my way through it and whatnot until, a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely, fun may not be the right word, but I felt
entertaining.
It was I thought it was a really gripping movie.
Yeah.
Although I did go and look at Wikipedia and they were like, oh, somebody said it was basically the actors are good, but the plot's kind of silly. And I'm like, what? All right, whatever.
Well,
you guys are dumb.
It's a Tom Clancy book, so. And I know my father was pretty much a fan of that kind of genre and those storybooks. But to me, it was an interesting story nonetheless. It really captivated me wanting to know more what was going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what... And plus, seeing how they were able to deal with certain things within the movie. There are a bunch of scenes that we'll probably go through that we enjoyed. Mm-hmm. That kind of go, yeah, that doesn't happen, or, no, I can't see that be really happening at all. But with that, we'll move right along into our favorite scenes in the movie. So, Greg, what's your first favorite scene?
So I actually did not necessarily scenes, but just kind of themes, right? There were a couple of pretty awesome scenes that I'll talk about, but so I didn't really quite understand the plan. And I'm not knocking it, but the plan of Ramius was, okay, step 1. It kind of reminds me of the Underpants Gnomes plan from South Park, right? It's okay, step 1, tell Russia you're defecting. Step 2, turn on your Caterpillar drive and disappear from nobody. Nobody can find you. Okay, Gotcha. At some point or another, you get the crew off using a fake radiation emergency, and you figured out how to do that. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then step 4. This is the question mark. I don't know what the next step is. But then, step 5, live out your days in America. I don't know how he planned on, was he going to drive the boat up to a port in
New York?
In New York.
They actually talked about
Norfolk,
that within the movie.
Yeah, it was what's he doing? If Jack Ryan doesn't do this, if he doesn't figure out what his motives are and that he's defecting and whatever, they're gonna get blown out of the water. Flat out, they're done. And I mean, and I was like, what? What is? I really just didn't understand what his idea was. If he didn't tell Russia in the beginning that, hey, I'm fuck you guys, then okay, maybe you have nobody knows that you're missing.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you just don't show up. But yeah, I really didn't understand how he was planning on contacting the Americans.
Morse code.
But I mean, I'll tell you what, that Morse code stuff was fucking crazy. It's like, oh yeah, my Morse is super rusty, so I may not have told him the right stuff. I'm like, if you just remember Morse code off the top of your head, and somebody can watch it, and maybe that's the way they were back in the 80s, back in the Cold War. Maybe that's the way submarine captains needed to be versed in all that stuff. But good on them.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that was my number 5.
Yeah. All right. Well, my first one would be the intro with the words was very interesting to me because they have like a whole little digital layout basically of the story itself, telling us how the events we were about to see never happened by the Soviet or American governments. Mm-hmm. Then we get that whole intro with the conversation spoken in Russian, but every time after that, the Russians are on screen for, I guess, within a whole first like 15 minutes and 20 seconds of the movie, it's always in Russian every time the Russians are on. But until Putin, of all things, his name is Putin.
Yeah.
Is reciting a quote from Captain Ramius's log and quoting his thoughts from an American author. Honestly, it sounded to me like Hemingway. I didn't research it too much, but it sounded to me like Hemingway in some way. I could be wrong. But then Ramius takes out Putin and blames it on the tea and hits his head after he reads the ship's orders to stop Ramius from defecting. And I just thought, oh, okay, all right, that's a nice setup. It's like, and then you got, Tim Curry coming in and everybody else and Sam Neill and stating, he takes the key saying now he's in charge. And I guess he was the political diplomat that died.
He's the political officer.
Yeah, on the boat. So then Ramius takes charge, and there's no questions asked at that point.
Yeah, it was. I mean, basically, what it seemed like was that. So Tim Curry's the doc, and as a doc, he is not in any kind of he's not in the line of succession for the boat, the command of the boat, or anything like that. Yeah, it seemed like Putin was the one person that Ramius had to take out, basically to there was no fucking way he was going to let things get away. Yeah, but everybody else was kind of like, okay, well, hey, we can figure out how to convince everybody else to get off the boat. But there was no way that Putin, even with a radiation emergency, there's no way Putin's going to let anybody get away with taking the boat away. Yeah, I really actually thought that and I don't know, did the copy that you watched, did it have subtitles when they were speaking in Russian?
No, it did
initially?
not.
Okay, I was like, wait, is this supposed to have subtitles?
That's what I thought,
too. Remember. And then, and I remember, I very specifically remember because, people mock Connery's Russian accent, but I thought it was actually really effective that it's like, hey, it's in Russian and Russian and Russian. And then, okay, you're very specifically, and I actually looked it up, and the last word that he says in Russian is Armageddon, which is the same word in English. Yes. And then he starts speaking English. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, hey, you know what? That's the first time that's like, hey, now for the ability of the audience to understand, we are now going to have everything in English until the English speakers and the Russians, they get together. And then it's like, oh, and now we're speaking Russian again because there's obviously a language barrier. Yeah.
We have to understand what the hell they're talking about at that point.
I mean, I wouldn't have an issue with subtitles. I don't mind subtitles. I know a lot of people are really down on subtitles.
I don't mind subtitles as much, but I think it probably had to do with the actors because you're asking a lot of them to do all that dialogue in a foreign language.
Learn Russian.
Yeah, learn this in Russian completely. Now, mind you, other films later on, you see a lot of people doing a lot more of foreign language, so that's part of their job description. But this was like 90. This is not 30 years later, so.
Yeah.
And your next one?
My next one. All right, so this is the other thing. So I'm getting the kind of the negatives or confusions out of the way. So the Saboteur, and this is what again, like I said, I went on Wikipedia and just looked through some stuff, but. My initial response was the cook is the saboteur. He's real well informed for a cook. he knows how to disable the caterpillar drive. He knows how to blow up the missile.
Well, they had Tim Curry on the boat, so it's got to be Clue.
got to be the butler. But so I was like, he had to be a plant. And then in Wikipedia, it said it was a GRU plant. So basically a Russian plant. I'm assuming KGB or something to that effect. Did we get told that he was like some sort of agent or something?
No, not that I recall.
Because at the when
it's kind of been washed over at that point.
Yeah, when Ryan kills him, he's like, "You're just a cook," and he's like, and I'm like, "Yeah, he's just a cook. How the fuck does he know how to do all this shit?"
Exactly.
But so I thought that they could have used a little bit more explaining, or I mean, obviously a spy is not going to have credentials on him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to be a plant of some sort.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole sabotage concept of, hey, caterpillar drive, certain specific, well hidden fuse panel or whatever, and then knowing how to that's a lot of shit for a guy to know,
especially a cook.
And because we have zero idea.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that was my one dig. It was like, what? You need to tell me something.
Yeah, well, nobody could be like LL Cool J and Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah.
All right, well, my next up would be the USS Dallas sub detects the Russian sub, and they think it's a whale. Which is pretty funny because we go through this whole subroutine and you got the one that's overseeing the new guy and they pick up and they detect. And then that's literally how all these events unfold at a certain point. And they realize because of Ryan and his research, and he already submitted it to, his superior at that point, gives him the information about this Russian sub. And they realize, okay, this is it. And then they go into a conference call and he's thrown into the mix, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was a well put together sequence. So the whole, hey, the reveal by Jeffrey, I think it's Jeffrey Jones, I believe, was the
he kind of brought
DSRV expert. But it's all of these. Okay, sounds like this and sounds like that and sounds like, and then Jones is like, hit it. Hit me again. What else you got? Like, is this kind of sub? And nope, it's a whale. And they're like, oh, well, great. Biologics. And he's like, oh, and then it is funny that it ended up turning out being, oh, what would it sound like? Like a whale? Oh, okay. So that's why the boat just appeared out of nowhere when they shifted to main propulsion as opposed to the caterpillar drive. Yeah, it was. I thought that Jones was a lot of fun, and then it was actually super convenient. And I noticed it because I notice more things now. It was just super convenient that he happened to be the guy, the one enlisted guy that came on board the Red October when they went over in the DSRV. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was a cool thing. And as someone who has listened to Sonar Stacks before, I can't tell any of that shit. I don't see how those guys identify that stuff. But, a lot of them are really, really good at their jobs and very, very impressive.
Well, they have their ear to the water, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess that's their life at that point. Unless they have a lot of other things going on. Who knows? Did you have another one?
So I really enjoyed the sequence of events after they made contact, right? So they hit the Morse code via the periscopes, and now one ping only. So that's a popular quote, one ping only, and then so it's okay. So we're going down to the Laurentian Abyssal, right? So hey, this is somewhere real deep. Where we can go and, should be all by ourselves, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're there, okay, hey, we've got the radiation emergency, and then we're going to surface, and we need to get all the crew off the boat, and the officers are going to go down with the ship, and whatever. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the tenseness of the scene where you're like, oh shit, like the Americans found them, and these people don't know that that Red October is trying to defect, and they're gonna blow them out of the water, and then the torpedoes in the water, and you see, and like, because I knew a majority, kind of like the basis of the end of the movie, I was not worried about it, but I was like, oh shit, like that is crazy, and I couldn't figure out who was hitting the button, like with his finger on the button, and the fact that it was Admiral Greer, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So you heard the torpedo hit the hull, and you heard an explosion, and I was never here, and it was awesome.
Yeah, that was an intense scene though, when they were going and dealing with that, and they were all on the ship at that point.
Yeah, so they're submerging the boat, and all of the Russian crew is in the life rafts, and so they submerge, and then they see the torpedo in the water, and it's like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, and and then it explodes. Now, I didn't see any explosion like in the surface of the water or anything like that, so I guess that was just for people who were, like the American officials and whatnot, for somebody to say, oh yeah, I definitely heard it, and they definitely went down, to be able to basically salvage the rest of the boat. Yeah. Or just appear in some other shipyard or whatever to break it down and study. That was a super tense scene, and it was like, okay, so then without, I guess, with the DRC, then I guess the plan went off, quote unquote, without a hitch. With the exception of the saboteur and the extra Russian boat. Yeah. That whole sequence of events was one of my favorite parts of the movie, that was actually super exciting and like kind of got your heart beating. Yeah. Like faster.
Well, next up for me would be Jack Ryan getting on the Dallas itself. I thought that was an intense scene, but also nerve-wracking to watch. That whole coordination to get him on the ship was just intense with the chopper. And mind you, my father hated heights and had to rappel when he had to go through the Marines, as well as being in an emergency service police officer for New York City. So he hated heights. I don't mind heights as much as long as I have some sort of security or protection involved, and I know what the hell I'm doing beforehand. And I've done this when I've gone ziplining or rappelling or anything of that nature. But to me, the winds, the way they were trying to lower him down, how they were trying to hook him to get onto the ship, I was glued to my seat going, no, I don't think so. No.
So this is my number 2. Okay. So this is my next point, because this was one of those scenes, like, that shit's fucking crazy. Yeah. And what's funny is that on my last boat, we had an injury on board, and we had someone who was hurt, and he needed to get off, and we were going to do a helo transfer.
Oh, wow.
We ended up not doing it because the fog was really, really bad, and weather didn't support, but we were going to. It was bad enough that the guy needed to get off the boat. So what we ended up doing was we ended up just transferring him to a tugboat, and also not super safe in, just off the coast of New England. But this is like January, and the waves are shitty, and
it's cold as hell.
And these guys, all the guys topside, and it wasn't from the sail, but it was from the top of the boat. Yeah, and it was not. It was. I watched the guys come down and move. This was something that everybody is strapped in. Everybody's got a harness on. Everybody's strapped to the railing. Yep. And I say railing, it's like the deck up there. Yeah. So that you can slide back and forth, and the harness just rolls up and down. And
they're basically carbineers, aren't they? Just clipped on, and then they're just sliding. Yep. Because you would think in January it's slippery because it's so cold and it gets icy.
You saw the guy, I don't know if he was the XO or who it was, but who went over the top of off the top of the sail and in the harness, and he's just and the captain's holding on to him. The captain should have had a harness on. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. I saw that too. I thought the same thing. I'm like, everybody should be having a harness.
Yeah, 100%. He should have had a harness on. It is safety 101. But this entire scene was like, you talk about adrenaline cinema. This is the one that makes you go, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit.
Exactly.
I wasn't 100% sure. And the other thing about it was that it seemed like the boat was still moving relatively quickly. Like, it didn't seem like what they should have done is they should have slowed down and stopped so that, even in bad wind or whatever, like, they are still, and you're trying to hit a still target instead of a moving target from a helicopter, which is obviously also
still moving. Yeah.
Yeah. And, they've got the hook and they're trying to hook him in. And it was super, super crazy. I thought it was an awesome scene.
Yeah.
And, then Alec Baldwin Jack Ryan cuts the thing and falls into you have 4 minutes from the time that you enter into the water. Man overboard. That's no shit. That's what they say.
Yeah.
No, man overboard, port side, or whatever side it is.
Yeah.
And then they basically get up there, open up hatches, and then drag him in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was going to be less than 4 minutes, but he was cold as shit.
Yeah, but you still say, thanks for having me on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to meet you. The chopper transfer was absolutely, that was my number 2.
All right, cool.
How about you? What's your number 2?
That would be...
Or your next one.
Well, my next one would be Jack Ryan getting on the sub and talking to Ramius, and Ramius understood that they were there to help with them with their mission to defect. But I love the fact that Ramius points out in Russian to Ryan that he thinks that Mancuso is a cowboy because of a gun on his holster. Then the trust in working together with the torpedo that was launched at them from the Russians, they kind of like collaborated and worked together with that.
Oh yeah, I mean the fact that like Ramius puts an American captain on the con.
Yeah.
So that's even if you don't know, you must have picked up on the gravity of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you normally have your trusted officers in control. You have the con, which means you have control of the boat. And it was like it's a huge deal to turn over your boat to a foreign captain. Although you're literally turning your boat over to that government. So I mean, I guess it's kind of a moot point at that point. But yeah, it was the whole the collaboration between Ramius and Ryan and Mancuso and the navigator, Catamaran or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
It was the working together in order to do everything that we needed to do or they needed to do was great. It was fantastic.
It worked out in the end and very intense, but it's pretty cool at the very end. You get to see them all work together. That's what I really appreciated too towards the end. It's like, we're in this together and we're going to get this to work.
So then my number 1 was partly that but it was the way that the submarine moved. And I say moved. So when they were going through Thor's twins and it was like, okay, we have an exact number of seconds that we will go at this speed and then we will make a left. Just think about it this way. If you are navigating in your bedroom at night, you know that you need to go 6 steps, and then you make it left and then you go 5 steps and you run to the bathroom door.
Yeah.
And you can have your hands out and you can, touch things. And even if your eyes are open, it's almost completely dark.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't put your hands out. If you put your hands out and you touch something in a submarine, you're running into a fucking wall. And like the USS San Francisco back in, God, how long ago was it now? 2011, I think. It ran into an underwater mountain. And the entire front end of that submarine was caved in, running at flank speed. And, it was a freak thing in that it was an underwater mountain that wasn't charted or they didn't have it on their charts. And that's no shit. You want to go see some crazy shit? Go Google pictures of the USS San Francisco after the collision.
Yeah.
The entire front end of the boat is completely caved in. And they're lucky they only had 1 fatality from the actual impact itself.
Wow.
But yeah, so they're moving through all of these, rock formations and shit. And like that, I really enjoyed. I thought that the visuals of the boat moving through all the rock formations was fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm sure, obviously it wasn't real boats out there, but I don't necessarily know how they did those effects. Were they like mini models? Was it CGI in the 80s?
No,
I
90s. No, it would be green screen, blue screen, whatever they were.
Yeah, but it didn't look like a green screen. Like I've seen shitty green screen from 2015, and like this looked way better than that.
Huh.
In my personal opinion.
Matte paintings, probably. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. But I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And, but so going through the twins, and then like when the torpedo was after them from the anti-submarine aircraft, and he was like, okay, well, we got to keep going. We got to keep going and keep going and keep going. Okay, now turn full rudder. And that was great. Now so I feel like some of those maneuvers were pretty realistic. The ones, and I'm just going to call it a dogfight because dogfight's in the air, but I don't know what you would call an underwater fight.
Yeah.
A fish fight? I don't know. But so the ones in the fish fight were less like submarines. They displace, hundreds of thousands of tons of water.
Yeah.
They don't move on a dime.
No.
They don't. Especially as big as the Red October was, 650 feet. That's bigger than Trident submarines that have the nuclear payload in America. And like, they do not move quickly anywhere. And they sure as hell don't do the quick maneuvers like you saw on the.
They basically sped it up for film purposes, if you think about it. That's actually
to
probably suspend
probably
your disbelief, but
because it's
a lot of like, let's move this way. Okay, it's a hurry up and like let's get this moving, and they move it, and then it's all about waiting.
Yep,
is it going to hit us? Is it going to hit us? Oh, it missed us. Okay, perfect. Let's change our direction now, and it's another matter of waiting.
The LA like slid in behind them and threw countermeasures and then emergency blue. And I mean, like
it was just too quick. Yeah, I get you.
Not just quick, but like you do not. They talked about contacts and whatnot.
Yeah.
You do not operate that close to other submarines.
No, you don't.
Period.
Yeah.
Ever. You do not. Now, maybe like this is some crazy shit, but like it's like maybe in this situation you might, but that was fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's been adapted from a book to a movie. And,
sure.
Yeah. So
I mean, but yeah, like a couple of meters apart. Like that is intense. As well as we had when I was on the boat, we had a surface ship go basically run us over. And what we say is run us over is you have your like 2D map, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have just like, okay, here's my dot and here's their dot. And, if they go above you, like you shouldn't be within like, X number of 1,000 meters of another boat or contact or whatever.
Yeah.
We got run over, and by run over, I just mean they were occupying the same space. We were much lower than they were, but you could hear the propellers
above you
in the boat. I mean, and that's with a few hundred feet of water between you. There's that much aggravation in the water, and if you're that close, just crazy. Anyway.
It could cause a lot of problems.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Anyway, like I said, I thought that for dramatic effect and dramatic license, it was great.
Yeah.
But I just, because it's at least a part of what I do, is a little bit less believable.
Yeah.
That was my last one. Yeah.
My last one would be, overall, it was that ending scene. It was kind of a green screen, but great dialogue, but the visual took me away from the scene itself.
Because, and the Penobscot.
Yeah, it was a great dialogue between Alec Baldwin and Sean Connery, but it was very well done, in my opinion. And Ryan stating to Ramius, "Welcome to the New World," as they're approaching. And basically, it's him defecting at that point. So basically, we get a nice ending to the story. So Ramius got what he wanted. Ryan figured out, well, we got this guy, and they have somebody on their side. And of course, there he is on the flight back home with a teddy bear for his kid.
The other part to that is that now the U.S. also has this Caterpillar drive that they can reverse engineer and figure out, like, hey, we not just we accomplished the mission and people didn't die and all that, but you have basically light years ahead technology, and like you talk about success, that's fucking success.
Yeah.
So the and I didn't know this until I looked it up, but so Ryan saying "Welcome to the New World" was in response to what Ramius said. He quoted Christopher Columbus.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So, "Welcome to the New World" was a whole kind of theme there. But yeah, it was like that was definitely like a nice breather at the end. That's like, oh my God, that was a whole bunch of crazy shit. And and now we are like, okay, cool.
Basically, it summed up what we got in the very beginning, because a lot of people were rescued, and both governments don't acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that was the coverage of the actual movie. So now we're going to just move on into interesting facts or unknown facts about the movie Hunt for Red October from 1990. So I'll start us off with number one. Even though the novel had been a bestseller, nobody wanted to make the movie. Tom Clancy's book is a complicated story with a lot of technical jargon, which made Hollywood executives antsy. It also made the movie hard to summarize. And Hollywood, because of time constraints, very few people in a position to say yes to a project like this read the book. And that was admitted by the producer, May Snewfield. They generally read the reader's report, and this book doesn't condense well into 2 or 3 pages. Newfield got the project off the ground by getting a Paramount executive to read the novel, not just the book report, or the cliff notes, as it were,
right,
and see for himself how cinematic it could be.
Yeah, I mean, any of Clancy's work, you can't be like, oh, this is like the high points.
Exactly.
You have to read the book.
Yeah. I think that's even with Crichton books, too. You have to do the same
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So some people thought the movie might flop because by the time the movie actually was released, the Cold War had ended. It had ended, I believe, in early 1990 or late 1989, and then like it was like, oh hey, how is this? This isn't applicable anymore.
Yeah.
So they ended up setting it in 1984. Basically saying, hey, before Gorbachev took power, when this would be more feasible. Yeah, so the Communist Party was no longer totally in charge of in control of the USSR, and the old ways were dissolving. The world has changed. Gorbachev was Time's Man of the Decade. Defection was no longer an issue. It turned out not to be an issue, of course, and the film did very well with audiences and critics alike.
And there was a scene in the movie, too, with Gorbachev, I think.
I don't think that was Gorbachev. That was
just somebody in charge of the USSR at the time.
So that was his uncle, or that was
okay.
Ramius's uncle.
Yeah, because he was there with a cigarette, and then he had the tea.
And he was like, yeah, to everybody who walked in, or as he walked by them. Oh, good morning, sir. Yeah.
All right, next up, Sean Connery was a last-minute replacement. So the film had been under production for 2 weeks, and when word came that Klaus Maria Brandauer, who is out of Africa, the Austrian actor who had been signed to play the rogue Soviet sub-commander Marco Ramius, couldn't do it after all because of prior commitment. Connery took the part instead, needing only 1 day for rehearsal. Wow.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, he and Brandauer had acted together in 1983's Never Say Never Again, and would reunite again for the 1990s The Rush's House, which was shot shortly after The Hunt for Red October. Now that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty professional. Be like, you know what? Hey, give me a day. Let me give me just a day to rehearse, to get to know the people. Like just got here. Give me a day, and then we'll start filming.
And he had to learn Russian.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of Russian.
Little bit.
But yeah. So Connery almost turned down the movie due to a fax error.
Oh, wow.
So Connery says, I had reservations about it. I thought this kind of Cold War intrigue might be dated because of recent events. Turned out the studio had failed to fax the first page of the script, which explained that it took place before Gorbachev. And yeah, that's probably why no one ever uses fax machines anymore.
Yeah, everything's email.
Yeah, can you imagine like, hey, this is, and I'm just trying to think of, imagine Back to the Future, right? You get the summary for Back to the Future, and you don't get the first page.
Yeah.
In that, like, hey, you don't get the part where he's they're going to the mall and he's going back in time. You're just like, this guy's in fucking 1955 with. Yeah, exactly. I'm very confused. This is, yeah, that's pretty neat.
But it's pretty cool that Connery took it, though. And it's probably one of his most acclaimed movies, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Next up, the film got an uncredited rewrite, including all of the Russian dialogue from veteran filmmaker John Milius. And we've spoken about John Milius before in this podcast. So the writer of Apocalypse Now, Conan the Barbarian, and Red Dawn, who had directed Connery in 1975's The Wind and the Lion, told an interviewer in 2003 that the rumors of his involvement with the Hunt for Red October were true. He said he edited speeches for Connery's character, quote-unquote, "make it about me," the actor supposedly told him, and that he wrote all of the Russian stuff, everything that's Russian in that movie. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's basically like, hey, here's a relatively well-known and acclaimed writer. Yeah, just take a look at this and maybe make a few, complete rewrites and give me some more speeches.
Yeah. And that was at a time when Milius was not really working, and a lot of people looked down upon him because of his thoughts and his views. So I'm surprised. So this is pretty cool.
So it was also confirmed that some of the naval technology that was talked about in the film was actually still classified at the time. In the movie, the Red October can be super stealthy by turning on its caterpillar engines and turning off its main propulsion units and navigating silently through a method called gravimetry.
Gravimetry. Yep.
Gravimetry. Okay. I don't know. In real life, Russian subs didn't have that capability, but U.S. subs did.
Oh, wow.
And it was a secret. The information was declassified a few months after the film was released, whether that was because of the movie or because the tech was by then no longer new. No one can or no one will say for sure.
That's pretty cool. It gets you the thought of run, sell it, run deep.
Yeah.
Next up, the U.S. Navy cooperated fully, quote unquote, and expensively, quote, end quote, with Paramount, at least in part because of Top Gun. So Mace Newfield met with the resistance when he first approached the Navy for help, but several admirals were fans of Clancy's novel, and they appreciated what Paramount's Top Gun had done for Navy jet fighters. In Newfield's words, the Navy eventually decided that the Hunt for Red October would be the good way of, quote-unquote, showing taxpayers where their money was going. Tax dollars weren't used to make the movie, though the Navy charged millions for the use of its equipment, personnel, and so forth, which I do believe.
Oh, no, the government absolutely got their dime.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, what I read was that the crews of the Houston, the La Jolla, and I think and another boat were each basically hired by the production company because it was just easier to have them as background actors, hire them as background actors than it was to actually train real actors of how to operate or how to move around on board a submarine.
That makes sense.
And very specifically to that, and it may not be that particular guy, but when Mancuso is talking to Ryan and Ryan's like on the ground and he's like leaning, he's like basically he shows them the new orders or like the new orders from the government saying to shoot down the Red October. They're like, oh hey, hold on just a second, and they move from one side to, they say, okay, hey, we're going to stop talking, and then we're going to stop the conversation. We're going to let someone walk by. Like, that's the thing that happens, right? So like those quarters are tight. Like, a lot of like the, we'll say the geography on the subs wasn't necessarily accurate.
Yeah.
But the tight spaces and the fact that you have to find, just speak quietly and, be in a specific spot, and it's all tight spaces. Like, there's basically no place for to have freedom of movement. And, I thought they did a really good job of kind of encompassing the closest of it, even if they weren't filming on a submarine. They just built a bunch of sound stages. And that was cool.
Yeah, we spoke about this before when we covered Fear the Walking Dead on Podcastica and Walking Dead Cast for that one episode when it was on a nuclear sub, and they kind of kept it pretty much similar to what you were talking about then. So I highly recommend that you listeners check out that Podcastica episode on Walking Dead Cast when we talked about Fear the Walking Dead. What was it? The second to the last.
Yeah, it was like episode finale. 15 of season 6. I think.
Yeah. So check that out.
Yeah, the Houston was the one that did the emergency blow at the end, and they did something like 40 or 50 emergency blows in training and for film, on like in practice, for that. It wasn't feasible to shoot those interiors, so they actually like built sound stages and actually built the interiors in a studio. But they were one of the things that they like, the sets actually got put on hydraulics, so that like they would actually move. So when they then when Connery like grabs his, or maybe it's like grabs his coffee cup as it slides from one side to another, that was a practical effect. They actually like put it on like gimbals to make it tilt from one side to another. And then apparently those actually made Connery seasick.
That's cool. All right, next up.
So Alec Baldwin, he wanted to come back for the sequels, but was edged out when Paramount learned they could get Harrison Ford. Son of a bitch, right? Like, it's complicated, and there are at least two sides to every story, but here's the gist. While negotiations with Baldwin were still ongoing, Paramount allegedly offered the part to Ford, who was a bigger box office draw. Now, initially, they actually offered the part to, the part for Red October to Harrison Ford, but he turned it down. Here, the Ford, the studio still owed money to, because of a previous project that had fallen through. Baldwin had been dithering over the specifics of his deal, and now a Paramount executive used that indecision to force his hand. Either commit right now to an open-ended contract for Patriot Games, and whatever came next or after, or be withdrawn. Not wanting to give up his chance to appear in A Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway, Baldwin left Jack Ryan behind.
Wow. Interesting. Next up, creating the right ping sound took forever.
One ping only.
Sound designer Frank Serafine told American Cinematographer that he and his team, quote unquote, must have created 500 different pings before director John McTiernan found one he liked. The radar ping was manufactured electronically using sine waves and reverb, but other sound effects were recorded from real sources. For example, the squeals and groans of the submarine under stress were taken from the sounds of a Disneyland's Space Mountain roller coaster cars as they go around turns. Well, that is Foley work at its best, so.
That's so those pings are, as a layperson, the pings, if you hear a ping, you just hear a ping and you're like, yep, okay, that sounds pretty legit.
Convincing, yeah.
Yeah. I knew that John McTiernan directed this. I didn't realize that, it was the same guy who directed Die Hard. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh man, John McTiernan, his name sounds familiar. And I was like, oh shit, he did Die Hard. And then that Christopher Columbus quote that we mentioned earlier. So in the film's final moments, as Ramius looks forward to his new life as in America's Factory, he says, "And the sea will grant each man new hope, as sleep brings dreams of home." He attributes this line to Christopher Columbus, who knew a thing or two about sea voyages and new homes. But John McTiernan said in the director's commentary that the quotation was the work of screenwriter Larry Ferguson, not good old Chris Columbus. But that's what you get for looking stuff up on Wikipedia.
Exactly. Next up, it was inspired by combining a couple of true stories. So, in 1975, a Soviet Navy officer named Valery Sablin led a mutiny on the frigate, not submarine, Storyevo, or Storyevo, not because he wanted to move to America and embrace democracy, but because he believed that the current Soviet administration wasn't socialist enough. The Kremlin sent 13 ships and 3 aircrafts in pursuit of Sablin, who was arrested and executed for treason. Before that, in 1961, a Soviet Navy officer named Jonas Pleskis did indeed take a ship, quote-unquote, a submarine tender, not a submarine, to Sweden instead of its intended destination, and then, quote-unquote, with some CIA help, successfully defected to the United States, where he lived out the rest of his days. Huh.
Yeah, I imagine that Clancy did his homework and took what he considered the important parts of each of these stories, and it was like, oh, you know what, these are awesome stories. I should definitely write a book about this.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what good writing is. They take from little stories that they heard. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten Jaws or, Jurassic
everything's a remake
Park.
of something.
Yeah, everything's adapted from something or elaborated from another story. So
few original works, but so many amazing screenplays and works.
And movies, that we get. Yep.
Yeah. Next, the producer actually wanted Kevin Costner for the lead, but Costner, he had other ideas. As Mace Neufeld explained in a behind-the-scenes DVD feature, I'd gotten quite friendly with Kevin Costner, and I went to Kevin about playing Jack Ryan, but he was up to his neck and very enthusiastic about doing this Buffalo movie. I was like, you'd rather do a Buffalo movie? The Buffalo movie, which also involved dancing with some wolves or something, earned Costner his Academy Award for Best Director and Best Picture. So maybe he got the better end of that deal.
I think so. And lastly, at least 3 of the cast members had actual military experience. So Sean Connery was in the Royal Navy, Scott Glenn was a U.S. Marine, and James Earl Jones was in the ROTC and did U.S. Ranger training during the Korean War. As research for the Hunt for Red October, Glenn was invited to spend a couple of days on the actual nuclear submarine, where the captain instructed the crew to take orders from Glenn. Quote unquote, don't worry, he only gave orders fed to him by the real captain.
Yeah, so one of the, again, disclaimer of Wikipedia, it said that actually Baldwin and Glenn went out on a sub.
Yes.
And that Baldwin actually, so when Baldwin is there and he's like, make your heading 315, or when Ramius tells him go to heading 315,
mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, okay. How do I do that? Turn that to, go to here. So apparently he actually sat at the helm, as the helmsman plainsman, because on a submarine you have a helmsman and plainsman, or at least on that type, where you actually are controlling the planes, which help control your depth, and then the helm, which would control your direction.
Yes. And
so you get on older boats, they're manned by 2 people, one controlling each set of those. So he actually went through and learned how to actually accomplish those tasks that he was doing in the movie, which I thought was really cool.
That is cool. Pretty much the horizontal and the vertical, if you think about it. The horizontal being your plane and the vertical being... Oh, no, the horizontal the other way. It would be...
No, yeah, you're right. The helm is direction. Yes. So side to side. And then the planes, because you talk about your stern planes and your fair water planes, which is the big fin-looking thing sticking out of the side of the sail.
Yeah.
And they'll tilt back and forth to make you go up or down in the water.
That's pretty cool that he actually got the information and know how to present it. That's pretty cool.
That was really neat.
All right. Well, on to quotes. So do you have a couple or a few?
So the one in particular that I remember is Captain of the Singing. let them sing. I mean, I was like, oh, these guys are just, it'd be like if we were singing the Star Spangled Banner because something awesome was happening. And he's just like, you know what? These guys have earned it.
Yeah, they did.
Even though I'm going to like fake a radiation accident later and kick them off the boat. Like, you know what? Let them sing.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was really, really cool.
Let them get it out. Is that all you had or no?
So honestly, I kind of got into the movie, so I didn't like some of the things, like some of the quotes have kind of stuck with me. I thought it was really interesting that Vasily Borden, or Sam Neill's character, he wanted to go to Montana and have a pickup truck.
Oh yeah.
And 3 years later in Jurassic Park, that's where we found him, in the Badlands in Montana.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
That's a good way. It's a good segue.
Those are the only two. Like, I really paid attention to quotes for the first like 20 minutes of the movie, and then I was just like totally into the movie. So,
all right, I only have a few, so I'll read them off real quick. Jeffrey Pelt says, "Listen, I'm a politician, which means I'm a cheat and a liar, and then I'm not kissing babies. I'm stealing their lollipops, but it also means I keep my options open."
At least he's honest, right? That's what we said about Bill Clinton back in the day.
Next one would be Ramius to Ryan saying, "And the sea will grant each man a new hope, as sleep brings dreams of home. Christopher Columbus." And Ryan just retorts, "Welcome to the New World, Captain." Sorry, that was my bad Sean Connery accent.
No, that's fine. All of us have a bad Sean Connery accent.
So, what do you need? Welcome to the Rock. The last one would be Ramius himself, and I'm not using it with an accent. "It reminds me of the heady days of Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin when the world trembled at the sound of our rockets. Now they will tremble again at the sound of our silence. The order is, engage the silent drive."
That was like a pretty, like, he had such good speeches. Like, Milius did a hell of a job giving him some good soliloquies.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So that was our coverage of The Hunt for Red October, our favorite thoughts.
I do have a couple of notes, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, like I mentioned, the layout of the subs not necessarily being necessarily accurate. I really enjoyed the accuracy of some of the terminology. Hey, make your heading or make your depth whatever, 900 meters at one point they said. Make your heading 315, and then they'd give repeat backs, and like that's what actually happens in Control on a submarine. Like there's a whole lot of yelling going on.
Oh yeah.
And it's actually really, really well done. And then some of the people that you met, obviously you met the captain, Mancuso, you met the sonarman, Jones. And then they talked about Cobb. So Jones refers to Cobb, who's talking shit about him. And he's talking about either Mozart or whoever it was. And so that's chief of the boat. And then at one point, the captain, and it might have been confusing for some people, but he said, the captain says to, I'm sorry, it wasn't the captain, it was the XO, because the captain was on the Red October. He says, "Chief of the watch, emergency below," and you see the Cobb sitting at the chief of the watch panel, and that was actually super accurate with regard to, this is the guy giving the orders, this is the guy actually like put, and so where you might have a very junior sailor normally in there, he was actually like the Cobb, the chief of the boat, the highest ranking mostly. Enlisted person on the boat is sitting at the control panel. I thought it was really neat. All right, so the defection plan. Is it possible? Sure. It is funny because, we have mid-watch conversations on the boat, and we would talk about, be like, okay, well, what would it take? We're bored as shit, right? We're out to sea for, 60, 70, 80 days at a time, and you're like, okay, we got to talk about something. So we would talk about what it was. Okay, well, what's the minimum number of people we could use to like take over the boat? If we were to, we weren't actually talking about killing people, but how do we execute this, right? So, well, you'd have to go like in the middle of the mid-watch, and you'd have you have to use knives, because if you shot anybody, then like the watch standers would come up with their guns and their sidearms, and well, how many people would you need? You need like 2 people in the engine room and, maybe 4 people in control. So we could have like a minimum of probably 12 people that you could operate the entire sub. But the problem being is, anyway, it was absolutely something where it was, I say fun to talk about. We're just really, really fucking bored. But yeah, so it was I would say it was possible. They had the officers about I think it was 11 people that were sitting at that table.
Yeah.
And then minus the XO.
But you guys would really discuss about mutiny within the ship as you were bored?
It's not mutiny. I mean, okay, I guess it is mutiny. But it wasn't. It was, yes, we were bored. And we were all just supposing. It's just also very junior sailors. We wouldn't talk about that once we actually kind of, cared.
Yeah.
But, and then my last little thing. So from the Urban Dictionary, the Crazy Ivan.
Yeah.
They referred to the Crazy Ivan, in the movie was where, basically what we call a baffle clear, because you have sonar, which you can detect in all of your sonar arrays and whatnot. You can detect, effectively like 270 degrees in an arc from your left side, your back left side to your back right side.
Okay.
270, 280, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to see what's behind you, you need to slow down and turn to one side or the other. And they demonstrated that. They called it a Crazy Ivan, but it's really just called a baffle clear. So your baffles are basically your blind spots via sonar.
Yeah.
From the Urban Dictionary, the Crazy Ivan, in the book and movie Hunt for October, a sharp turn made by a Russian submarine to look behind it with sonar. Or, by analogy, any quick, unexpected, and radical change in direction, literally or metaphorically. And the examples made me giggle. Damn it, she's pulling a Crazy Ivan. I'll stop. And then this is one that I've been to before. Oh, damn it, they're out of tickets. Crazy Ivan, let's go to the bar. Like, oh, hey, we're going to Hershey Park. Oh, Crazy Ivan.
Oh,
COVID restrictions. We're going to the bar.
That'll be funny if that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where we are. What happened? Crazy Ivan.
Crazy Ivan. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, cool. So that was pretty much our coverage, I guess, for The Hunt for Red October for 1990. So with that, we move right along into ratings. And we like to rate these movies between 1 and 10 on an adrenaline scale. So, Greg, what do you have?
There were so many scenes in this that were just great and actually semi-believable. So, like, I put like on a like, hey, this was exciting, this was tense.
Yeah.
Like an 8.5, like 8.5, because and maybe it's because it's close to my heart. But it's absolutely, like, to me, there's a bunch of tension and a bunch of like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
That's pretty cool. I give it about a 7.5. I was giving it about an 8. Basically, due to the suspense in the film and the characters within and how believable they portrayed it, especially Connery and Baldwin and Glenn and Neil and all the famous people that we got to watch in the film. I think they portrayed it very well, and I was really entertained by it. So it's something I would recommend for anybody who has never seen the film. Obviously, watching it over and over again, obviously you know what the outcome is, so it's not something you could watch over and over again, unless you're really into that kind of thing. But to me, I give it like good 7.5 to 8 within that range.
Gotcha.
So, and next up would be guilty pleasure movies. So that could be any movie that are not popular or great, but you just have to watch every once in a while because you just love to watch the movie every once in a while for your own pleasure. Some people might not like it, Wikipedia or Rotten Tomatoes or whatever person out there on the internet hates it, or you just bring it up to somebody in casual conversation and you go, I hate that movie, but you truly love it. But that's your pleasure. So, what do you have?
I don't have a lot of action movies that I'm like, okay, I gotta watch this because I need my fix.
Yeah.
Easy ones for me to toss on and just have in the background were like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And I think that more than that, it's more like the comedic relief and okay, hey, they're climbing out of the boat and they're walking on the bottom of the ocean, and that's cool. And then I can like go about whatever the hell it is that I'm doing.
Oh.
A couple that I like Down Periscope.
That's cool.
I would highly recommend Down Periscope because I mean it's Kelsey Grammer. It's I can't remember the guy's name, but he was in Rocket Man. And the Harlan Williams. Harlan Williams in it. It's got the big guy from Herman's Head back in the 90s. It's a fun movie, and specific to submarines, it is more goofy. It's got Rip Torn as one of the admirals. It's good stuff. And then I'm just going to plug this movie, like one of the most underrated movies out there. Big Trouble is one that not Big Trouble Little China, but Big Trouble. No, with Tim Allen and Rene Russo and Stanley Tucci, and it had a poor release date. I would recommend that if you enjoy comedy, it's based on a Dave Barry book. I would enjoy. That's one of those other ones that I go, hey, you haven't seen this? Well, hey, you should totally check it out.
Cool.
What do you got, Mark?
That would be Mikhail's Navy from 1997.
Mikhail's Navy is also Tom Arnold, right?
Yep, Tom Arnold, Bruce Campbell. There's so many. It's a cast of so many comedians. I just love it. So, yeah, obviously you got Ernest Borgnine, you got Tim Curry in it, Dean Stockwell, and a slew of so much comedic talent, like, French Stewart, Deborah Messing, and Tommy Chong. And it's just one of those funny movies you just got to watch, but the comedic outtake and based upon what they're doing is hilarious. And it's, of course, based upon the old 60s movie and TV series. Mm-hmm. Which Borgnine was involved with too, by the way. So it's something that I liked. And some people go, I hate that movie. I'm like, why do you hate that movie? It's funny as hell.
I mean, I especially enjoy the uniforms in that movie and the white Dixie caps.
Yes.
With the dungarees, like specifically that Bruce Campbell wore. I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. That's pretty good stuff.
And there's a lot of outtakes too that you could see that they do on the on DVD and Blu-rays that they have out there. Bruce Campbell actually likes talking about it because they were all a bunch of shemps, according to them. They were just having fun. And it's fun to go see Bruce Campbell just talk about his stuff when he does books. Mm-hmm. So he'll just go into stories of what he used to do, and that would be, one of the movies he talks about. So I just loved it.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah. All right, so moving right along. So, where else can listeners hear you, or do you have any podcast recommendations?
I'm not really on any podcast. I show up every once in a while in some of the Podcastica or the Pirate Radio shows, but the podcast that I listen to pretty regularly, I listen to TV Podcast Industries and all of their MCU coverage. Panels to Pixels with you and Steve and sometimes Jamie. I love How Did This Get Made and Unspooled, which are two opposites on the spectrum of movies. So How Did This Get Made covers horrible movies or just absolutely crazy movies like the Fast and the Furious selection or the grouping. Yeah. And they just talk about how crazy it is. But then Unspooled is Amy Richardson and Paul Scheer talking about like the top 100 on the AFI list and like unpacking them. Hey, do they hold up? Do they deserve to still be on the list? But I just listened to them cover Back to the Future, and that was actually really, really neat.
Oh, awesome.
They've got some cool kind of tidbits in there that I'd never heard before.
Cool. And yeah, you could actually hear Greg. He was on an episode of Panels to Pixels when we were talking WandaVision. Mm-hmm. And, you've been on, was it Walking Dead cast? Or, you were on Fear the Walking Dead with myself and Jason. I know that.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about, we talked some sub stuff when they were talking about the nuclear weapons and whatnot. And then, I covered, one of the Fear the Walking Deads with Lucy and when one of the off seasons, I covered The Kingdom,
cool.
the first season of The Kingdom, which was, damn it, I still need to watch the second season of
that. Just more stuff to watch.
Yeah.
Well, as always, you could find me on Panels to Pixels, and that can be found on the Next Level Podcast Network, just as Greg had mentioned. So there I cover comics adapted to movies, TV shows, and anime. And as you're listening to this, it might be where What If ends and we're moving on to something new. I'm not too sure because we're recording this far in advance. But just check out Panels to Pixels on the Next Level Podcast Network.
Yeah, What If is so good. Like if you're watching that, watch that. It's awesome.
Exactly. And just check out our coverage. Steve and I will be covering that. And to submit your feedback, well, you could submit your theories and feedback. Just go to our Facebook group, and that would be facebook.com/AdrenalineCinemaPodcast. And there you can just send a comment on a post when we're posting a picture of what we're going to be covering at that time. Or you can just send us a message directly through it, so the messenger does work. So send us a message directly and just let us know exactly what you're commenting on, and we'll try to get it out there as soon as possible. With that, you could also send an email to our email address, which would be AdrenalineCinemaPodcast@gmail.com. With that, you could actually just write out a regular text format email, and we'll read that out. If not, you could just record your voice and send that as an attachment on that particular email to us at AdrenalineCinemaPodcast@gmail.com. And where you could be heard, well, where we could be heard, could be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, TuneIn, Deezer, whatever your podcast player of choice. Obviously, you're hearing from us. And the best thing you could do is recommend us to a friend or recommend it to one friend. You know, words spread like a virus. So if you just talk about Adrenaline Cinema Podcast, I'm pretty sure somebody would be listening saying, hey, I need to check that out. So if you could do us a favor, it would be great. If there's a rating or review on any of those platforms that you hear us on, please give us a rating or review. It'd be highly appreciated. So as far as the Pyrocore Entertainment Network, where this particular podcast can be found, I implore you to please check out the other content that we have on the Pyrocore Entertainment Network. We currently have 3 podcast creators and 1 artist associated with the network. So I recommend Watched It in the 80s with Damien Vitale, where he covers movies and TV shows that were in the 80s. He has varying guests and talk about and has a great way of breaking those TV shows and movies down within those particular podcasts. I just love the movies within the 80s as well, so I love listening to Damien's podcast to reflect on those. And there will be some movies that we have covered right here on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast that you'll hear on Watched It in the 80s. But there will be a difference within what we talk about, and I highly recommend that you listen to him and his co-hosts with their thoughts, because it's really cool to get different perspectives when it comes to a specific subject, movie, or TV show. We also recommend that you check out Run for Your Lives on the Pyrocore Entertainment Network, and that's with Daphne and Paige, and they cover monster movies, disaster movies, apocalypse film style movies, stuff like that. They have a large catalog of work to listen to, and I highly endorse them, so I highly recommend them. Plus, there is a link to Kirk Manley's website. Kirk is an artist that has created great podcasting work for the Podcastica Network, and he did it for Panels to Pixels as well, and of course, the Pyrocore Entertainment Network artwork that you'll see on the website. So if you'd like to hire Kirk for something, just go to pyrocoreentertainment.com and click on the links for everyone. You know, just like even the other podcasts, you could actually listen to them on that particular site because it'll link you to Spotify or anything that you can, and you could just add those to your playlist. And of course, you could hear us there, Adrenaline Cinema Podcast, which you're currently listening to. So right now, we're currently looking to add to the Pyrocore Entertainment Network family. So if you or a friend are a content creator and is interested in being involved with Pyrocore Entertainment, please submit a sample of your work to pyrocoreentertainment@gmail.com. We are not looking for just podcasters, but also video content creators, artist creators. You could be a cosplayer if all you want and you have your own page. Just submit that and we'll take that into consideration and we'll reach out to you. Just send that to pyrocoreentertainment@gmail.com. That's Pirate Corps spelled out CORPS, entertainment@gmail.com. So that's pretty much it for our show, and I just want to thank everyone for listening, and I want to thank Greg for picking out this movie, because it was fun to talk about.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It was a blast.
Oh, yeah. So I just want to thank all you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you later. I'm Mark.
I'm Greg.
And this was Adrenaline Cinema Podcast.